Matt Lubchansky. And Matt, how are you? You're back, I see you.
Yes, hi. I'm doing good.
Is a queer, non-binary cartoonist, the 2020 Block Prize finalist, and associate editor of Ignate's award-winning magazine and website, The Nib. Their work has appeared in The Nib, Playboy, Mad Magazine, Current Affairs, In These Times, Eater, Gothamist, you name it, Brooklyn Magazine, New York Magazine, Food and Wine, The Toast, etc. Also, the co-author of Dad Magazine, which came out from Quirk in 2016, which I personally loved so much. Matt lives in Queens, New York, and we're super excited to have you here today. We're also super thrilled to have Laurie Halse Anderson here today. She's a New York Times bestselling author known for tackling tough subjects with humor and sensitivity. Two of her books, Speak and Chains, were National Book Award finalists, and Chains was also shortlisted for the United Kingdom's Carnegie Medal. She was also selected by the American Library Association for the Margaret A. Edwards Award for her significant contribution to young adult literature. Laurie has also been honored for her battle for intellectual freedom by the National Coalition Against Censorship. We are super happy to have you here today. And also, just as a side note, Laurie is the mother of one of our favorite librarians, just so you all know. And I just want to introduce Alisa Garcia. Alisa, thank you for joining us today. She's a supervising librarian of teen services at the New York Public Library and the vice president-elect of the Northeast chapter of REFORMA. She is motivated to foster a love of reading in reluctant teen readers and strives to introduce them to a diverse world and experience through books. Mentoring new librarians, Alisa savors the opportunities to broaden her scope in promoting diversity in librarianship. And getting reluctant teen readers to read is probably on the top of one of the hardest things to do. So thank you for all of your hard work, Alisa, and you guys can have a nice little conversation here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Kelly. Hi, Laurie. Hi, Matt. I'm super excited to be in conversation with the two of you today. So these are two new upcoming anthologies. I'm thrilled about them, and I can't wait for the rest of our colleagues to hear about them and just what they're about and how impactful I believe they will be. So I want to start off. So anthologies are actually one of my favorite things to recommend. And one of the reasons why is because I feel that so many voices are given an opportunity to be heard through anthologies, and own voices are important. So for me as a librarian working in the Bronx, working with teens, I love books that are own voices and kids can see themselves in these books. So that's what I find between these two anthologies. They're two different things, but own voices are coming through in both of the anthologies. So I just want to hear what was the approach, in coming for these anthologies to come together, and just like the timeline, the approach to it, and the inspiration behind it. So you guys can either Laurie or Matt, yeah.
All right, I will dive into it. As we were waiting for our program to come up, I was editing another one of the little short snippets in my anthology, our anthology. It's definitely a teamwork approach. My Wonder Woman graphic novel, which came out last month, it's a little bit different than I think people have seen Wonder Woman before, in that she lives in Queens. She comes from Themyscira and winds up in Astoria, and it's largely a story that is set in the real world. Like, the villain is a real villain, the developer, just for the record. And so because that's the kind of thing that I write a lot. And when I was working on it, what I kept on kind of holding fast to was the need for my version of Wonder Woman, because she's 16, to be like that combination that we know is like at the core of Wonder Woman, of compassion and justice. So the whole process itself was wonderful. And then coming out of that writing process, the wonderful people at DC said, would you want to be an editor on an anthology about other real life Wonder Woman? And it was just, this last couple of years, I've had the opportunity to do some new stuff in terms of different kinds of approaches to storytelling, and this has been so amazing So we have, I can't disclose the entire, all of the women involved in this project. That will be unveiled, I think it's on August the 22nd at the DC Fandom virtual event. But we have a collection of writers and we have a collection of artists. Almost all of them are own voices who are reflecting, this is nonfiction, for another change for me, real life Wonder Women, real life girls and women who took on something an equity, injustice in the world, and they changed it. That's one of the things that I love most about working with teens. And I know every librarian out there, you guys know this. And first of all, all love and respect, especially in this hard time, because you're the ones who are on the front lines of making sure that all of our children and our teenagers are feeling seen and valued, and you offer them the resources they need. Some of our kids have been had to lock down, especially in the Northeast, sometimes with people who aren't treating them well. And I know that when they can start reaching out to their librarians and get the support they need, that's going to help make life a lot better. And I'm already totally distracted. So let's come back, Laurie Beth. Let's come back. So yeah, this is a collection of short stories. I just read the one about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and we're really holding her in our thoughts as well. The new one that came in is about Emma Gonzalez. Yeah, right. So I get to read the scripts. I got to suggest a lot of the writers and a couple of different artists. And then after the scripts have been improved, then the artist gets to work and I get to see the art. And it's just like watching magic in real time. I'm super happy about this.
Yay.
And excited.
So are we. Matt.
Yes, hi, sorry. As I will say, Laurie, as someone who's lived in Astoria for the last 11 years, that's a good choice of villain as a developer. So the impetus for the NIB putting together this anthology, which I'm the associate editor of, was we've been publishing daily on comics online for like 6 or 7 years. I've been with the NIB since 2014. So we publish online every day. It's all nonfiction comics, political satire, humor, and nonfiction, whether it be memoir or history comics. And we realized we wanted to put out some anthologies of our work this year. And we were going through our contributors and what we had, and we have so many queer contributors telling their stories. Independent comics increasingly is very overwhelmingly queer space. If you were to go to like a small comics convention like SPS or TCAF or something, it's just all like the queer community there is humongous. I wrote a whole thing for the intro of the book about how I don't think I would have ever found my way as a queer person without comics. So it's very near and dear to my heart, the queer comics community. And so we've got this book together from 6 years of some of our best comics about queer issues and queer topics, and also funny stuff, and like history comics about Gad Beck, who was like a gay Jewish Nazi fighter in Germany in the 40s, and like old like lesbian and queer separatist towns out west, and and then also we've commissioned a bunch of new work for the book exclusive to it. And we've got like over 30 of our contributors in there, and it's just a lot of, we try to, at the NIB, as a nonfiction publication, a lot of our mission is to, like, outside of like talking about the daily news or whatever, a lot of it is like letting people tell their own stories. Comics is a very sort of like accessible art form, both in terms of creation and reading it. So it's an easy way for a lot of people to tell their stories, a lot of people for the first time. We just try to give people that space, as the book is called.
Yeah, no, and that's great, and this is why I'm so excited about these two anthologies, because I can definitely see that there's been a lot of thought process put into this, and that taken into consideration just the different issues and the voices of the diverse individuals of the world. So one of the things I wanted to touch on was that, so this, in these anthologies, like the world's in turmoil right now, so we know this, it's crazy. And it seems like these two anthologies will cover topics that are currently, like it's like a premonition, like the two guys, like, no, these things weren't going to, no, I mean, you wouldn't know these things were going to happen, and we wouldn't want any of them to happen. But as I was reading and doing my research on this, like there's a lot of stuff about social justice, inequality, racial issues, immigration, and also that touches on Diana, the Wonder Woman, the 16-year-old version of Wonder Woman. So how do you guys, so it's like, how do you feel about this? And how do you, this is why I believe they will be very impactful, because I think of the topics that they will touch, and that they're touching, and they're going to be a voice for people to not only see themselves within these anthologies, but also be able to not understand, but maybe try to understand, and also have conversations about everything that is happening right now. Sometimes it's very difficult to put into words what's happening right now, and through books, I feel we can express these things. So just wanted to hear your thoughts on what you believe these anthologies will bring.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, sure. So like, I think a lot of it for us is like, sure, it's like comics for our times, and things are fairly uniquely bad right now, right, for a lot of reasons. But, you know, there's almost nothing that's going on right now that you can't draw a very straight line to through the last couple of decades, the entire time I've been alive, of how world, specifically American politics, sort of function. So I think there's something about being queer or being marginalized. And the other way, like we try to go for, in terms of our contributors, we try to represent a lot of different marginalized voices, whether it be race or gender or sexual orientation. You know, like so it's sort of, I think if you are operating from those places, it was like maybe when we were putting the comics together, you know, in the last most of a decade, like these things are not, it's not right to say that things are obvious, but things were more self-evidently bad. And I think there's something about, you know, I talk about this again in the intro to the book, like in terms of queerness, not necessarily just representing, oh, I am, you know, gay or lesbian or non-binary, trans, like it's not just those things specifically, it's about like the specific sort of like criminalization of these things. And the sort of like revolutionary spirit of embodying these identities. And I think if you're coming from that perspective, things have always sort of been bad, you know? Like, so I think that's maybe where a lot of the contributors in this book are coming from.
I find myself thinking a lot about when I look at the primarily straight, hetero, white men who are in power right now and have been in power for 400 years. And I think back on what were they reading when they were 14? What were they reading at 16 and 20? And if you are 18 years old right now, then you were just kind of waking up into your adolescence in the last presidential election. And this feels like the only world you've ever known, right, in terms of political awareness. And we have kids coming up to 14 now who are, you know, who are, again, just, it's like this feels normal to them, as horrifying as that is. And I think this is such an important part for us all to remember, because we've seen how hierarchical power structures fail everybody, particularly people who have been marginalized by those who occupy the power and the privilege. We've been in a hierarchical structure since white people came to this country and began the waves of genocide. And we have the opportunity, this is the great thing about, the only great thing about old structures blowing up, is that we get to start again. And I'm really hoping that we, you know, following our children, because the kids are always going to lead us, right? They're the ones who are at that age where they can see the hypocrisy, they can see the injustice, and heaven knows they have the energy, God bless them. And the rest of us need to take naps. So we had this opportunity with our work right? With all these kinds of books that we're trying so hard, all these voices we're trying to amplify, all these artists, to create a community-based, in community structures, the operative word is not power, it's empathy, right? Yeah. And if you care about kids and if you care about public libraries, you're already deeply rooted in this. Books like this, not only will they give information and representation, will help people feel comfortable about who they are and also give them insight and love and compassion for people who might not be like they are. But it also, these books are the source of comfort and of strength for our readers. And you know, when they can see themselves in books and when that keeps their curiosity alive, then that's how we honor them. That's how the adults in the community honor our kids for who and where they are in their lives. And they need that now.
Yeah, I completely agree with the two of you. So, Laurie, I wanted to just point out about Wonder Woman Tempest. So Diana is 16, which is, you know, it's great to see, you know, 16-year-old Wonder Woman, which I don't believe ever seen, so it's pretty cool. But what I do like, aside from everything that she experiences and all of the issues, she's a typical teenager. She's 16. I mean, of course, you know, she lives in a castle, she's like this girl, but she's 16 and she experiences everything that you experience when you're 16. So I feel there's representation in that, definitely in that aspect of being 16 and being weird and not wanting a party. And I could identify with it. I didn't want no big parties at 16. I was like, my mom, take me on a trip. I want to travel. So I don't want to. So I definitely appreciate that. So did you, you know, when you thought about the character, what was your inspiration? And did you want to, you know, make her like, you didn't want to make her a typical, just like Wonder Woman?
Well, the DC told me that she needed to be 16, and the story had to start in Themyscira and wind up in New York, right? As all good stories should wind up in New York. But other than that, I didn't have to worry about continuity. And what struck me first and hardest was, you know, when you're coming and you go through puberty and you're trying to figure out who you are. She was in a community that had never seen anybody go through that before, because all the Amazons were, boom, created as adults. So can you imagine how much more difficult that would have been? And, you know, I wrote this largely in the beginning of 2018, right? And I was thinking about all the hatred that was being flung at immigrants and the families seeking asylum. And that was like really, really driving me. But I'm actually seeing the book through a slightly different lens now. I've always kind of seen this story that I created. It's a great metaphor for adolescence, right? For that moment where like you don't really see the world, and all of a sudden it is like in your face, you can't avoid, and that's when those amazing adolescents come through, and they're like, this is wrong, right? I'm gonna fix this, like Emma Gonzalez and people like that. But now, a couple of years after having written it, and also kind of really trying to do deep understanding of my own privilege and whiteness, this is a story about a kid who grew up in the most profound privilege ever. She grew up in a world that was completely safe, right? That didn't have anybody suffering, for, you know, of hunger or disenfranchisement or violence or anything like that. So this is actually you talk kind of a representation that I think we need a little bit more of, showing kids who are coming from a place of safety and privilege what that is, right? To get them to reflect on their own privilege, to get them to reflect on what does this mean that my life is different from somebody who lives in a different place, and then what is their responsibility, again, to the community.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and it comes through in this book because it's packed with themes, so definitely.
Can I just give a quick shout out to my artist?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the artist of this book is Leila Del Duca, and oh my gosh.
It's amazing.
And Kelly Fitzpatrick did the colors, and Saida Timofonte is the letterer. Team Diana.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, yeah, gorgeous artwork, so great job.
Thanks, Elisa.
So Matt, so, you know, you were the editor of Be Gay, Do Comics, and, you know, it's so many representations, so much diversity, and just own stories and the own voices of everyone that's featured in the book. How was the process to choose the illustrators, the artwork, and just how did that go? How did that work? Because there's so many contributors, so I'm curious about how that went.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, like we have the advantage of being in this daily publication where we have tons and tons, hundreds and hundreds of artists that have worked for us in the past. And, you know, all the editors are cartoonists also. So we've all been sort of like embedded in this community for so long that we do have a pretty good handle on, you know, who can do what. And the great news is we've been around long enough and we're established enough that people are always coming to us. Like even a lot of cartoonists who do mostly fiction work, a lot of them have 1 or 2 or 3 nonfiction pieces in them because there's something that happened to them, or you know, they have an interesting perspective on something, or they like have some obsession with some historical figure that's hasn't seen its story told. So I think we actually have just a mountain of pitches all the time from new people, which we love. You know, we go to conventions and we're always on the hunt for like new talent and young people who haven't pitched before. But you know, so we sort of like when we were putting this book together, it was sort of we began like a very arduous process of basically going through everything we've ever published, picking out what we think is thematically correct for this book in the long form pieces, and then we basically made a list of our favorite like regular contributors who do shorter form like satire or humor work, myself included, and like sort of like went through, picked those people, and then went through their archives and picked out like our favorite comics of theirs, or ones that were like, I think what's good about one of the things about local cartoons that's good is like it's very, a lot of them are very good sort of like time capsules for a moment in history. So it was interesting to go back and like find these things about big events and like here's what, you know, popular sentiment was at the time. And I think, and then for the book we commissioned a couple of new long form pieces, and that was like, oh, we've never gotten something from a couple of artists that we like. We haven't got anything from a great writer named Taneka Stotts. We haven't gotten anything from Brina Nunez. There's a lot of good artists that we hadn't gotten anything from that we thought would be great additions to this book. So we just commissioned them on that. And we're not, and we're pretty used to, we also run a print quarterly. So it's like we're used to the sort of process of getting this stuff together.
Okay. So we're almost coming to the end of our conversation, but I really appreciate it, and I think a lot of the librarians that are joining us today, they will look forward and will be recommending this because it's definitely, I think we're in a time where personal perspectives are definitely going to be, they've always been important, but I feel they're more important than ever right now because everyone is experiencing things and just, you know, it's traumatic times, and we've all going through just experiencing things in different ways. So I believe these 2 books will give personal perspectives of things, and they will inspire conversation and will inspire readers to be open to the stories of others, of acceptance, own voices, and just being better humans. So I'm definitely just looking forward to it. For Wonder Women of History, I'm excited to know about who the creators are. It's such a big secret, and but we know some of the women who will be featured. Who will be featured in the book. So there's Michelle Obama.
Yeah. Oh, there's going to be all kinds of great people. Can I just throw out one suggestion for the librarians to consider? I think both of these books are going to be terrific for programming.
Yes.
Have the kids in your library system, pick a snippet of their family history or their community history. Collaborate with a friend, have somebody do the writing, somebody do the art, and work out whatever they're going through in a really creative way.
I think that's a great suggestion, and myself and my colleagues, we are definitely taking notes. So I want to give you and Matt the opportunity to just close out with some statements before we end.
Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, a statement. Yeah, I don't know. We're very proud of this book. I have a copy here. It's very beautiful. The cover is incredible. It's by an artist named Maddie G. I didn't mention that. Yeah, so I don't know. This is, I think, a great book for, like readers of any age. There's like some more adult material in there, but nothing crazy. I don't know. It's a great book. We're really proud of it and really happy for it to be out in the world.
I just want to close by saying that these times let us really focus in on what our priorities are. And as I mentioned earlier, those guys who have always been in power, right now, the kids who are going to be coming to our libraries or our programming, they're going to be the ones in power in a couple of decades. So all of the adults in the room, we have the opportunity to do better for them and to do better by them, and making sure that they have all kinds of materials, fiction, nonfiction, graphic novels, poetry, novels in verse, everything to feed their hungry minds. That's how we make the world better.
So that was great, and I want to thank you and Matt for giving me the opportunity to with the two of you. Total finger, and I guess I can relax.
Yeah, great job, Elisa.
Thank you so
much.
It's joyful.
Yeah, thank you, Laurie.
Great job.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.